All right, well, good afternoon and welcome. My name is David Swing. I'm Chief of Police for the City of Morgan Hill Police Department. I want to thank you all for being here this afternoon for our press conference. I'd like to introduce some people who are here in the room with me this afternoon. I'll start with Mayor Rich Constantine, City Manager Christina Turner, our council members Renee Spring, Larry Carr, John McKay, and Yvonne Martinez Beltran. And then also with me is part of my command staff, Captain Shane Paulsgrove, Captain Emil Kokish, and Sergeant Bill Norman, who led our investigation yesterday afternoon. So with that, I'd like to turn over first to Mayor Constantine to say a few words. Mayor?
Thank you, Chief. And good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the City of Morgan Hill and the Morgan Hill City Council, we wish to express our extreme sympathy and condolences to the families and the co-workers of the victims of last night's event. Our hearts are grieving with you today. Also, we'd like to show our appreciation for the partner agencies, CAL FIRE, County EMS, Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office for their response to last night's event. Also want to thank the citizens that helped the workers of the Ford store as they escaped danger. And to the citizens of Morgan Hill, I just want to express that though last night's events were tragic, one tragedy does not a trend make, and Morgan Hill is and will continue to be one of Santa Clara County's safest cities. And with that, I will turn this over to Chief David Swing, Morgan Hill Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to begin by echoing some of the comments just recently made by Mayor Constantine and thanking our first responders and partner agencies. When I showed up on scene into the event, I was overwhelmed by the number of emergency vehicles that were there. The assistance from our partner agencies was quick, it was numerous in number, and it was without hesitation. And so thanks to the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office, the California Highway Patrol, the San Jose Police Department, the Gilroy Police Department, CAL FIRE, and the Morgan Hill Fire Department, which, by the way, they responded right behind our officers with the rescue task force. So their bravery in that was simply remarkable in how they partnered with us. The Santa Clara County DA's office, the County Crime Lab, and the County Medical Examiner's office all had a role in our response yesterday in our investigation. It also goes without saying to recognize the deep appreciation for the men and women of the Morgan Hill Police Department, for our dispatchers and officers. Our dispatchers answered numerous frantic calls on the 911 lines, taking out relevant data, identifying what was needed, passing it on to our responding officers. It was that level of professionalism and excellence in their work that allowed us to arrive on scene within 4 minutes of the original call, a 4-minute initial response time. The officers who responded, who stood tall in the face of danger, they ran towards that danger. They ran through a parking lot where evil could have lurked around any corner, around any car. This is emblematic of the bravery that is shown by our officers every single day, the hundreds of thousands of peace officers throughout the nation. And though we never want this to occur again, I am exceptionally proud of the courage, the professionalism, the bravery shown by our team in this response, knowing that the investment of our time and training and resources has been well spent, as is evident through our response yesterday afternoon. Some of the incident details. One of the victims, as you see on the pictures behind me, is Javier Soto. Javier is a 38-year-old San Jose resident. He's worked for the Ford store since 2012. Javier started there as a parts counter clerk or technician and was promoted to parts manager. He leaves behind a wife and 2 sons. Javier was known for his love of his family, both his immediate and his extended family, and the love of his work. The second victim is Brian Light, a 59-year-old San Jose resident who was recruited to the Ford store in 2018 with over 30 years in the car industry. He was the parts and service director. And Brian was known for his mentoring ability, his love for helping others, And that was why he was brought to the Ford store, because he wanted to train up the next generation, because he found true purpose in his work and the success of other people. The Ford store has asked me to relay that there's a GoFundMe page set up, and that's available on their website for those who are interested. The suspect in this incident is Stephen Leak, age 60, also from San Jose. He worked at the parts counter supporting technicians who were servicing vehicles at the shop. The suspect has no prior criminal history. As I mentioned earlier, the call came in at 6:03, it was dispatched at 6:04, and we arrived on scene at 6:07. The first team of officers were directed to a subject down the parking lot, later determined to be the suspect, and the second team was directed to the victims inside the business. As I mentioned earlier, fire personnel were right behind us, and they pronounced the victims and suspects deceased on scene. Morgan Hill officers and Santa Clara County Sheriff's deputies searched the building, searched the grounds for additional victims and suspects, and found no one, found no other victims or suspects. So then our crime scene investigations team took over and partnered with the county crime lab, partnered with the sheriff's office to collect evidence, document the scene. We went through that, and that investigation lasted early into the morning hours. I think that team left our department around 5 o'clock this morning, which is why this conversation is happening this afternoon and not earlier today. From there, the detectives and officers from the Gilroy Morgan Hill Regional SWAT team went to the suspect's residence to serve a search warrant. And in the service of that search warrant, they found no other evidence of pre-planning or of motive or anything else that would lead us to why this incident occurred. It appears it was a spontaneous action on behalf of the suspect, which unfortunately resulted in the loss of two men and the loss of two fathers for families. Through our investigation, we learned that suspect Leak's employment was terminated early in the day at approximately 4:15. He left the building and waited in his car for 20 minutes or so before returning to his workstation back inside the building. He was then escorted into an office, a back office, where he had a conversation with the victims. And at that point, at some point during that conversation, the suspect shot Javier at point-blank range, killing him instantly. Brian then quickly engaged the suspect and tried to disarm him. And the suspect shot Brian multiple times during the struggle for the gun, resulting in his death. Brian's actions here are nothing short of heroic. And those actions allowed people to flee. It allowed them the precious seconds they needed to be able to flee after hearing the first shot, and to flee the building out of harm's way. It is likely that through those actions we prevented having additional victims on the scene yesterday afternoon. The suspect then walked into the parking lot, sat down on the curb, and shot himself in the head. As I mentioned earlier, we in our profession, in our department, make a tremendous investment of time in training, time and resources. And it's through that we were able to respond to this in a very professional way, in a way that emulates each of our core values: with pride and professionalism, respect, integrity, and safety and teamwork. And for that, I'm exceptionally proud. I also want to say that before we have a question and answer time, that for those that are in crisis, there's help available. There's help available for the suicide crisis hotline. There's help available by texting CONNECT to 741-741. But clearly, incidents like this are tragic, and they affect the entire community. And it is the strength and resiliency of our community that will help us to heal and to work through this. In the meantime, our department is committed to a thorough and comprehensive investigation, and that's what we've done thus far. At this point, I'd like to open up to any questions you may have, and I'll probably ask other people to take those questions. So, any questions?
And does it appear that the suspect had his weapon in the car with him? He didn't have to return home or go any other place to retrieve the weapon?
I'll turn it over to Sgt Morman to answer questions about the investigation.
And introduce yourself and spell your name, please.
Sergeant Bill Morman, N-O-R-M-A-N, Morgan Hill Police Department. To address your question, sir, yes, we believe that he was at the Ford store with weapons either on his person or in his vehicle.
Were there any other weapons in his
There
vehicle?
were multiple weapons located at the scene.
Such as?
Handguns.
How many?
Any guns found at his home?
Yes. We recovered well over a dozen firearms.
Does this suggest, sir, that there was a premeditation factor here? Came to work with the guns in his
That's
car?
what we were concerned with. Based on the statements from coworkers, we were believing at the initial stage of the investigation that this was a pre-planned event, but as the investigation continued, we're to the point now where we think he may have just carried weapons with him all the time.
Was he legally in possession of these weapons?
Yes. He has no criminal history. He had 12 firearms registered to him.
Do you know what he was?
kinds of guns were they, and were they both used?
The weapons that were used were a revolver, small caliber revolver, .38, and there was a semi-automatic recovered at the scene, which was not used.
Do you know the circumstances of why he was let go?
I don't have that information right now. I know that they had let him go earlier in the afternoon. I haven't spoken with staff from the Ford store yet.
You said the semi-automatic was recovered at the scene. Was that in the vehicle or in the store?
In the crime scene in the store.
In the store.
Did police arrive after the last shot was fired?
Yes, they were arriving on scene when the suspect took his life.
So did they hear the last shot?
Several officers reported hearing a gunshot being fired as they arrived.
What's the relationship between the leads and the two victims?
I believe the two victims were supervisors of the suspect
Do you know who
in the
did
parts
this?
department.
Do you know who actually did the firing?
I do not.
So when he returned after being fired, was there a sense he was just ignoring that he was fired and being defiant by returning and continuing to work?
Yeah, some of the statements that were given at the scene were from coworkers where he was lingering. That was kind of used, that word.
Was he saying anything to his coworkers? Was he expressing anger or calling anyone names or anything?
No, we don't have any of that information right now, through statements. It was more of a conversation between the two victims and the suspect.
Can
Bill, you mentioned-
characterize the actions, once again, of Mr. Light that tried to intervene and stop any further bloodshed?
Yes, when the first shots were fired, Xavier was hit first. Mr. Light, it looks like he tried to intervene and take the suspect down by physical force. Unfortunately, the suspect was he overcame him and shot him twice.
Had anyone at the dealership been concerned about him being volatile in the past?
We're still working on that. We have a lot of statements to go through. We interviewed quite a few people last night at the crime scene, and then we had follow-ups all throughout the night. So we're still kind of working through that.
Was there any security on scene when he was fired, as though maybe they were concerned he might cause some kind of problem?
I don't have any of that information. At that point, we're still looking into it.
So he was indeed fired?
Yes, the staff there at the Morgan Hill Ford store said he was fired approximately at 4:15. He walked out to his vehicle, which was parked in the north end of the parking lot. He was observed with coworkers out there in the vehicle. He then returned back into the store, was kind of hanging around his work area in the parts department, and then walked back to where the two victims were located in an office area of the parts department.
Do we know any of the reasons why he was fired?
I don't have that information.
Do you
No,
know if any 911 calls were made prior to shots being fired? Like from employees concerned about him still lingering around there?
No, I don't have any of that information. All the calls that came in were right as they were hearing the shots being fired. And it came in as an active shooter event. That's why we had the quick response from the sheriff's office and our neighboring agencies.
Do you know what if he was fired at 4:15, spent 20 minutes in his vehicle, comes back in about 4:45, what did he do for that hour? Was he just talking to employees or?
He was hanging around his workstation, and then he was having a conversation with both the victims for quite a while. he was hanging out outside their office. Both gentlemen, both victims were inside a office area, a small office, and he was observed outside that office.
Was that office glass? Some of them have glass offices where you could see
No,
through them. Or was-
no, it wasn't.
And you mentioned he had as many as 10 firearms?
With him?
Yeah, with, how many did he
No,
actually have?
we recovered 2 firearms at the scene.
Just to clarify, did the two supervisors, when he was hanging around his workstation, did they summon him in, like, we fired you, you need to leave now?
We're still working through that. There's a lot of video surveillance that we are going through right now, trying to put together what had happened, the events prior to the shooting, really portray what had happened inside the office.
And can you go over again, sorry if you already said this, but the relationship between the victims and the suspect? Were they the ones who actually did the firing? Was one of them, both of them, his manager?
Yes. It's my understanding that the first victim, Xavier, was his direct supervisor in the parts department, and Mr. Light was Xavier's supervisor. So they knew what was going on. We're trying to work through it.
And who was the one who actually gave him the resignation?
I don't have that information. I would, I'm not supposed to assume anything, but I would assume it would have been his direct supervisor.
Bill, just to clarify, so you don't believe that there were anybody else that, even though he struggled, and you said it saved lives, do you believe there were any other people he might have targeted?
I don't have any of that information right now. We are working through some statements that he may have tried to make entry into other offices as he was exiting, but we're still working through those statements. I know that the actions of Mr. Light allowed the customers and employees of that business time to get out. That we clearly see on the video surveillance. Without that, he would have been right on top of a lot of people.
What
Can you
street is?
clarify if it's Xavier or Javier in both now?
I was told Xavier. I can see if I can clarify that for you.
When the suspect was let go and he was hanging around the office and he goes back out to the parking lot and he was interacting with other folks out there, do I have that correct? Is there any information as to what his mood was like after he had left the office?
Most of the employees that we interviewed basically said that he was a quiet individual, kind of kept to himself. He had been an employee of the Ford store for approximately 8 years, worked in that general division for the parts department. I don't have any information to say that he was engaging in any other conversation or arguments or anything like that with any other employees.
We'll go back to your
Also
questions,
described
then
him-
we'll wrap it up.
Neighbors also described him as being quiet and kind of a loner, but they also thought that he might have felt that he was being bullied at work. Anything about that?
I have no information to lead me to believe he's being bullied.
What street is Mr. Leeds' home on that you searched, and did he live there alone or with?
Yes, he was, I'm sorry, let me grab my notes here. It's Russo Drive in San Jose, R-U-S-S-O. And before I wrap things up, there's a few people I would like to thank that helped us out in this investigation. Because of the multi-jurisdictional component to this investigation, San Jose Police Department really helped us out in securing his residence while we were able to work with the district attorney's office. Our bureau worked directly with Jonathan Beardsley with the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office. San Jose was able to contain his residence and wait for us as we put together the search warrant for his residence and responded up there in the early morning hours. San Jose Police Department Lieutenant Hutchings and Sergeants Offenberg and Trung were instrumental in securing that residence for us.
When you say securing, they just kept an eye on
Holding
the-
a perimeter, making sure that
Nobody went around.
it was held. And our concern initially was that there may have been family members out there, but they San Jose was able to talk to neighbors and get a better understanding of, who was living there.
Was Leet married?
I don't have any of that information with me. It appears he was a single male.
Chief, one more question for you, if I could.
Sure.
The victims have family members. You may have spoken with the family. How are they doing? How are they holding up?
We have been in contact with the families involved. I think that they are doing, I think that they're devastated, as anyone else would be. They're devastated by the loss of their loved one, a very unexpected and tragic and senseless loss of that. When we all go to work, we have an expectation to be able to go home at the end of the shift, just like we do as police officers. And it's tragic when that is not able to occur because of someone else's.
Chief, really quickly, the victims, can you tell us what cities they resided in?
They're both San Jose residents.
And the suspect was a resident of San Jose too, or he was a resident?
Yes, he's a resident of San Jose as well. Okay. Great, well, thank you all for coming, appreciate your time this afternoon. We will be available for individual questions if you have some. We'd be happy to spend some time with you. But again, thank you all very much.
Thank you.